My name is Dennis Doan. I own a tattoo shop here in San Diego, California. I'm also a philanthropist. I'm the founder of the Doan Foundation.
Welcome to the Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over. You seem like you're really busy with things that are beyond tattooing, and I think we're going to get into the tattooing quite a bit because I'm very interested in that sort of topic. How did you get into tattoo in the early days of your life?
I was tattooing as more of a financial necessity at the time. It was just me and my dad at home. We were on Section 8, welfare. I couldn't really get a job. I had a juvenile record. No matter how hard I tried, as soon as they saw that ding, they automatically rejected me. So I was doing side projects like washing cars, fixing car stereos, painting houses, and then eventually I got into tattooing. But it was because I couldn't afford to get tattoos that I decided I wanted to do them on myself. So I had a friend, I had an older friend that was tattooing at the time, and I had asked him to do a back piece on me, and he was willing to only charge me $700. But as a 15-year-old, you don't really have $700 laying around. So I was like, how am I gonna look like all my friends, but not have to pay as much? So I asked my cousin to use his credit card and buy me a tattoo machine on eBay, and I just got started the day I got everything.
But did you draw and sketch before you picked up a tattoo gun?
Yeah, I had always drawn throughout my life. I was always that kid that my group of students in high school, middle school would use for for the projects, like making the charts and everything, because that was like my forte versus they can do all the writing and organization and everything. But I was always that guy. I was really good with graphic design growing up. I kind of maneuvered myself around GeoCities and all those website builders when I was younger. Yeah, it's pretty much always been around, but it was never something I envisioned becoming a career, because as a Vietnamese American, your family, that topic doesn't even come up.
Just tattoos in the Vietnamese community is a big stigma. That's why I'm kind of like unpacking this. You're um, a few people in the line of the tattoo world that I am starting to build into because I want to know more about tattoo artists in the Vietnamese community, because I think it's a significant group of guys and gals that are doing work in the tattoo space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm starting to kind of explore this more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we have a cultural acceptance for tattoo traditions. I don't think we have a deep tradition.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but do you know if we have a history of tattoo artists in the world of the Vietnamese?
Different people have told me that Vietnamese fishermen used to tattoo fish scales on them or whatnot to go and catch them. But that's pretty much the only history that I can recall when it pertaining to Vietnamese people. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Other than that, yeah, I think it's like an acquired taste. It's going to take a while for Vietnamese people as a whole to kind of get used to it. And I think it's getting there. The younger generation is putting it out there more. So the older generation they have no choice but to accept it. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny about you is that
Mm.
when you're looking at you visually, you're tatted up, but when you
Yes.
speak, and it's not just when you speak, but when you are on social media, you write these lengthy prose, you write lengthy thoughts, and
Mm-hmm.
you're so soft spoken. And this idea of what we visualize, what we see in front of us as people versus what's going on in an artist's head, like with the tattoo artist, is very different. And that's why I thought, when I was first introduced to you, I thought this was very interesting. Your approach to sort of like this gentle words, and you write lengthy posts. I think it's very interesting. Did you ever go to school coming out of high school? Did you go to college? What was your education track like before you got into tattooing?
Growing up, I was always 4.0 student, perfect attendance, all that. Everything you can hope for. It didn't matter what I was doing on the streets. I was still taking care of business in the classroom. Um, my mom left when I was young. So during the 2 years after that, I kind of got stuck in this mental state. And that's when things went downhill a little bit. It was like freshman, sophomore year of high school. But I was able to pick myself back up, graduated high school with honors, got a full ride scholarship. I went to San Diego State and I was trying to become a plastic surgeon, actually.
Why plastic surgeon?
I don't know, I was always interested in it. I like working with my hands, obviously. But I looked up to my brother a lot growing up, and he became a doctor. So therefore, I thought I had to go the same path. You know what I mean? But me thinking in terms of trying to replicate his accomplishments, it kind of had an adverse effect, and it made me look down on myself, I
Yeah.
guess you could say,
Yeah.
throughout most of my life. You know what I mean? Until I was forced to do tattooing full time. That's when I finally realized it was my passion, and I just went all in.
Oh, that makes sense. This idea of contextually putting yourself next to your brother, and he's a doctor. And, so when you are in this, I don't know, post juvenile detention, post juvenile world, your
Mhm,
options, you said, were limited, right?
mhm.
But there's this academic sort of ability that you have that you're smarter, and
Yes,
you
yes,
feel like it's limited, so that shame compounds itself. Because I was going to ask you, because you write about the idea of shame. Is it a
yeah.
cultural shame, or is it just within the family that you experience this sort of shame, or is it all of the above?
I think it's a construct that society kind of inadvertently, casts on you. I mean, growing up, you're taught, people with tattoos are bad and they just got out of prison. And if you're not, you know, a doctor or lawyer, you're not going to make it. But it's ironic because I was the first person in my family born here in America, but I felt like I had to make up for my family's lack of, like, their dreams they didn't accomplish, the sacrifices they made, things like that. I felt like it was up to me to kind of carry the torch and go from 0 to 100. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure growing up, and
So
it didn't
wait,
even have to be said. It was just,
yeah. So do you think
there.
that you are competitive with your brother, and things are like you can compete toe to toe with him?
No, I wouldn't say that. We're in totally different, like, different realms. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's really, my life is just, it's very ironic. Everything is ironic. When I step into my brother's office to go visit him, I mean, I rarely there, but if his receptionist sees me, she's like, "Who the heck are you?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We look totally different. We have different approaches to life, but at the end of the day, we're still really close.
Yeah. So why do you think tattoos are important to people? And I ask this because I know that you spend a lot of time in the chair with another person in a chair.
Yes.
So it's like therapy work, right? Why
Yes.
do you think it's so important for people to get tattoos?
I think for the most part, people get them because they serve as reminders of milestones in their lives, whether or not they're good or bad. You know what I mean? Like, personally, all my tattoos suck. Like, I did most of them myself. Um, but I would never regret them because they were all sacrifices that I made at the time on my own body in order to do better for other people, right? So everything I have on me marks a certain time in my life and reminds me of where I was at that time. So I think that's the main reason. Other than that, there are some people that just get it for the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Um, trust me, I've tattooed kids that, I know they've been bullied their whole lives. They've never really, attracted the women they wanted. And then all of a sudden I'll tattoo their whole body and their whole persona changes.
Wow, that is
It's pretty
wild.
crazy. But I feel like it sometimes unleashes people's true self
Yeah.
after the fact. But yeah, it definitely changes lives in good and bad ways.
Wow. I never thought about that. That is a real interesting observation
It
because
instills confidence
it
for
it
sure.
unleashes something
Mm-hmm.
inside the human psyche when you put something so permanent on your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to do that so publicly, you are forcing yourself to actually grow and say, you know what, world, this is me and I'm going to put this out there. And especially like face tattoos or neck
Oh
tattoos,
yeah.
and those
Yeah.
are like really out in the public.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of times where that individual may have not gotten attention from family, friends, their peers, people out in the world, and all of a sudden they have all this attention on them, and people are asking them where they got their work done, and then that strikes conversations, and then it changes their lives. They go from introvert to extrovert.
Wow. And how has it changed the dynamics within your very niche cultural Vietnamese corner in your life? Has it, been different ever since you're fully coming out with tattoos? You're a tattoo artist, and the world that you come from, especially now that I know that there's like a doctor in the family, you had good grades. How has the sort of like the perception changed throughout the years of your career?
During the early years when I had started tattooing myself, I was doing it in the bathroom at like 1 in the morning, right? So I tattooed myself in the bathroom in my room. My dad had no clue I was doing tattoos. And at the time, the machines, they're really loud,
Loud,
like,
yeah.
the buzzing. But I also used to cut hair at the time. So I would just tell them like, oh, I'm cutting my hair or I'm cutting someone's hair or whatever. So I had clients over at the house. I just did that for a while. My, I had two upper half sleeves and both my legs were tattooed already. So I was wearing pants all the time. I was wearing long sleeve shirts all the time. And then when I was 19, I got my
So
my
he
neck tattooed.
he never saw any of this.
No.
Wow.
Well, he was barely home. Like my dad was always working or drinking, and I was just at home doing my thing. So I got my neck tattooed when I was 19, and I started having to wear like turtlenecks. So even in the summer, it'd be like 110 degrees. I'll still wear turtlenecks. And I actually went to Vietnam that year as well. And my mom's family is there, my grandparents. So I was wearing turtlenecks in Vietnam. You know how hot it is over there. So my grandma was like, "Ồ nóng vậy sao mặc đồ vậy?" And then I was like, "Oh, không biết sao chắc thấy hơi bệnh or something, right?" So I would say that every day I was there for like 3 weeks. It was so hot. But then after that, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. So when I came back from that, that's when I started revealing my tattoo slowly to my family, you
And what
know.
did they say?
Well, my mom, I like I said, she left when I was young, but we see each other once every 2, 3 years. And when we were in Vietnam, we went to this spa. So me and my brother went in one side, and my sister-in-law and mom were on the other side. I didn't know it would end up being co-ed when the massage part came. So I was wearing nothing but shorts, right? So I walked to the room, and my mom just looked at me and then just shook her head, and that's it. But
But I mean, she shook her head, but why would that have an effect on you? I mean, she left and, what,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, so
yeah. But
it's,
I've always been very. I think my issue is I always want to make people happy.
yeah.
I don't like to disappoint anyone. I don't like to um, measure any less than what people expect. So that's always been kind of instilled in my head. So I always have this guilty conscience about everything, you know. Um, but yeah, when she did that, and I was like, whatever. I'm just gonna. It's time. So when I came back, I started to wear shorts. I was able to dress like a normal person again. And over time, I think my head tattoo is the one where it takes people a while to kind of absorb it. Like I try not to show my head tattoo when I'm around my family, like the older folks, because I just want to avoid the questions and
Yeah.
all that. Yeah. But you just gotta pick and choose where you want to, be yourself. I mean, it's hard, but out of respect, in Vietnamese culture, you have this fine line between respect, disrespect, and old values, new values. You just gotta you gotta know who your audience is, basically. Read the room, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I find so interesting about tattoo artists, especially in the Vietnamese community, it being so new, and then this space that you have to navigate about being yourself, like you don't really think about that outside of the Vietnamese community. But when you're in the Vietnamese community, this idea of respect, this idea of navigating where we belong and what our positions are is tricky. And it's a weird thing. Why would we give a fuck? It's like, it's just such a weird thing to me that we would care about what our elders think about just ink on our body. And that's
Yeah.
why I just want to keep meeting tattoo artists and talking about
Yeah.
this topic.
Yeah. I think that another negative connotation to tattooing is say my uncle when he was in the refugee camps, he got tattooed there, like his stamp or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So there's just so many negative connotations to it that they've experienced in the past that it's hard for them to think of that one positive. You know what I mean? It always overweighs like the new positive that tattoos reveal. Um, but yeah, I mean, over time, I feel like, it'll be more accepted. But that's why most of my life I've gravitated towards, I hung out with a lot of Lao people growing up. My wife is Lao as well, but it's because they accepted me in every way, like tattoos, personality, my way of life, everything. They never judged me, even as a 15, 16-year-old being fully tattooed. So I've always gravitated towards other cultures because of that. I mean, I think it's sad, but eventually, over time, things will change. I truly believe that, and even now, when I go to nonprofit charity events and I sit down, I'll be sitting with a table of lawyers, doctors, and I can feel them looking at me differently because they're like, why the hell is this guy here? You know what I mean? And then I have this situation where I went to an event and I had donated a painting, and I sat there for a while and they didn't say a word to me for maybe like 2 hours until I got called up to basically present my donation. And then all of a sudden I got back and they're like, "Oh, let me take a picture with you and can you sign this?" And "Oh, I really like your work." And so, it's just it takes it takes walking into those situations to change it. If we keep avoiding those things and being intimidated or afraid to be around those type of people, we're never gonna make any progress. You know what I mean?
I love those kind of stories, man. I love it. Absolutely. And then that's
Yeah.
why I want to continually meet tattoo artists because of this very reason. The tattoo artists that I know, both in the Vietnamese community and outside, are pretty solid people who are thoughtful, just thoughtful human beings. I have a cousin, Joanna Wynn. She tattoos up here in LA, and she's just very thoughtful, hard as fuck, but she's thoughtful, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and
I feel like we have to be extra.
yes,
Everything we do, we have to go above and beyond because we have to eradicate any judgment people already have,
yeah.
when they see us. So you got to be extra nice. You have to be extra welcoming. Everything is above and beyond, pretty much.
But it's different. It's like, I think from a Vietnamese cultural traditional perspective, seeing you, it's almost like seeing probably the way they look at it as gang members or motorcycle
Mhm.
bike gang, or they affiliate it with things that are not soft things that are. And then when you talk to you and then we're going to get into this foundation work too, this mentoring and all this other stuff. It goes back to my kind of like this feeling that I get when I meet Vietnamese tattoo artists. You know, I had Andy Tran on recently. And I just want to get to know the tattooing community more, because I want to break through the stereotype of Vietnamese people, the older generation. When we look at people in America and the diaspora in Vietnam, there's these judgments that we make. You know, I have that in me. I have that deeply encoded within me. So I want to explore and find out how I can undo it in myself and in the older community as well. The 50, 60, 70-year-old people that listen to the podcast, that, wait a minute, these people, these artists, Vietnamese artists, tattoo artists, there are a lot of deep thinking guys. And what you've done with the foundation work and what you started resonates within me so much. So can you tell me what that journey was and how you got started with that work?
So I've been tattooing for, I think it's about 18 years now. Last summer, I kind of had an epiphany. I've been working so hard and striving towards all these goals, and it just feels like it's never enough. You know, you're always going to want a nicer car, a bigger shop, a bigger house, things like that. But, you know, as the years have gone on, I realized none of that stuff really makes me happy. There's no, you know, there's a sense of purpose because you're trying to drive yourself towards that goal. But once you reach that, it's just like, it's just going to repeat itself over and over. You know what I mean? So I did some deep digging, and I was thinking about my journey when I started and how my scholarships actually helped me a lot. Even though I didn't stay in college, it was definitely an experience to be had, because if I had not gone to college, I would have always thought to myself, okay, what if, you know, what if I could have been this or that? At least I went and proved to myself that it wasn't for me. And then that's when I gave up. But a lot of these kids, you know, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, which, you know, they're all low income immigrants, they don't have too many options. So they don't have too many options in terms of career, school choice, things like that. You know, there's very few that, you know, top-notch 4.1, 4.2 students that will ever make it. And even so, if they do and they don't have a scholarship to support them, it's like, how will they ever survive? They're going to end up, you know, dropping out after a few months. Can't pay tuition, can't pay for gas, things like that. So I decided I was going to try to do something that would help them even in the smallest ways. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own nonprofit. Because I had worked with a few during the pandemic. When I had created my Hate is a Virus artwork, I was working with them. I was donating some of the proceeds to them. But I also encountered a lot of nonprofits that felt kind of shady to me. You know what I mean? All I can say is they're all working towards the same goals, but it feels like they're all trying to step on each other's toes. So I was like, okay, this guy seems kind of weird. This organization seems kind of sketchy. Like, where's this money really going? I don't like not knowing, you know? So at that point, I'm like, you know, the only way for me to know where it's going is if I do it myself. So I told my wife, like one night, I'm like, I'm going to start a nonprofit. She's like, oh, okay. You know, I have so many business ideas all the time. She's just like, whatever. So next day, I literally put in the paperwork and just made it happen. And I initially wanted to just do my own thing. Basically, I donate every year anyway. So I was just going to put all this money into a fund and just give away scholarships, right? And one of my wife's friends, who was the one who introduced me to Jitao, he was like, why do it at all if you're not going to go all out? You know? And it's true, because my character, all my life, I've always gone all in everything I did. So I guess I was scared because I had no experience in the nonprofit sector. And looking the way I do, how am I going to reach out to donors, students even? How am I going to talk to teachers, counselors? But I was like, you know what? Let's change the narrative and let's try to make it happen. So I while that paperwork was going through, I built up my website. I did all the donor applications. I posted scholarships on all of the avenues online. I reached out to all these sponsors, donors, all types of stuff. I created T-shirts. Um, yeah, just the whole nine yards. So that was just last August. So shortly after, I started planning our first gala, and we just had that in May. And then that's when I realized like I was getting a lot more support than I had initially thought. You know what I mean? Like the community really wants to do something, and it helps that I have such a large network of clients that actually understand who I am, what I'm trying to do, and they know for a fact that I'm not going to go do something dumb with the money. You know what I mean? I'm very transparent in everything I do, so you can literally just track every step. I think that's really important. Um, the experience I've had with a lot of Asian nonprofits is that everything isn't so transparent. You know, like you get really confused about what you're doing or why you're helping, or you don't know, you don't see put a face to who the money is going to, and I don't like that at all. So the approach I wanted to take when it came to my nonprofit was I wasn't going to do it just for us Asian Americans. I was going to help all kids, and I want to take a different approach. I want to reach out to the Mikyang nonprofits, the Midang nonprofits, all that. So it's allowed me to kind of like weave in and out. I've worked with the Ronald McDonald Foundation, Ronald McDonald House Charities, and other different like American established organizations. I mean, there's a lot of Vietnamese nonprofits doing really good work, but I feel like it's time for us to venture out and basically represent us as a people giving back to other Americans. I think we've been established here for long enough to where, we can help the next generation of, Hispanics, things like that. Um, yeah, because it's all about inclusivity. It's most of my scholarship recipients for this past year, they're all pretty much Hispanic um, females from Los Angeles County because they were the ones who took the initiative. It's not like we're gonna pick all Asian kids, and I don't know. I just don't like the bias. I grew up with everyone in San Diego here. Our Vietnamese community is pretty big, but it's not like Orange County. You know what I mean? So the people who raised me were white, Mexican, Black. My best friend growing up was Mexican. His dad used to take me home in elementary school in his tortilla truck. And, it's just community. I think that's really important.
I love it, man. I love it because it's, you're giving back to the world and you're not just pigeonholing the giving, and it's helping people who are not even in San Diego.
Yeah.
Now, when you say your wife's friend Tao, like, how did she help? Because she's been on the podcast, and I'm just wondering how she played a hand in the. I saw some posts with her in it, and I thought it was very interesting. So, how does this all play in socially?
Yeah, it's okay. So one of my wife's best friends, his name is Vu. So Vu and Tao, they serve on the same. They're board of directors for North County Promise, which is a nonprofit in Oceanside here. So Vu knew Tao, and I didn't know anyone from the nonprofit sector, but people have used like my artwork for covers of their magazines and whatnot. So I think Vu had reached out to Tao like, hey, I got a friend named Dennis, and he is starting a nonprofit. Like, just hear him out. Maybe you guys just connect, right? So we met at this, high class pho place here in San Diego. And she walked in and we talked. And I had not realized that I think it's what is it called? It's like a Vietnamese women magazine that used my artwork for their cover.
Let's talk about that real quick. Because that came up twice already. Can you tell
Yeah.
me about that artwork? Because that's very relevant to our conversation as well.
Oh, okay. So during the peak of COVID, my business was shut down for 7 months. Okay. So during that time, the rise in Asian hate violence had gone up significantly. And I was just sitting at home, I felt like I couldn't do anything. I saw, people coming together and making a difference, trying to help help those victims out financially or by activism. So I think I was scrolling Instagram and I saw Hate is a Virus, the nonprofit organization. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a cool saying, like I think it'll make a difference. So I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have projects. I was literally just rescheduling clients every day. I sat down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna draw something, and I don't really draw for fun. Everything I do is directly pertaining to the project I'm gonna work on. It's very rare I get to do something just out of my head. So I sat down, I drew this girl in a Nong La with the sash on it. That was an American flag, and she had a mask over her face. So all this was supposed to represent us as Asian Americans, but we're not accepted. You know what I mean? And the background on that image was gray, which represents, how we're in this gray area where we're not like seen as American, but we're here and we contribute. But it's like when push comes to shove, it's like we're the enemy all of a sudden, right? So I posted a sketch of that before I had colored it online. Everyone's like, "Oh shit, that's super cool." Whatever.
So let's just talk about that description once again. It's a girl with a conical hat and
Mm-hmm.
she has a mask on that says
Yes.
hate is a virus. Is that what
Mm-hmm.
we're describing here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For all those just listening to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that vividly. So
Mm-hmm.
that was released during the height of the pandemic. Is that what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying?
So
And
it was 2020, I believe.
so, okay. So then how did you release it on your Instagram or how did it get circulated and go viral?
Well, honestly, like it's weird because I was just drawing it for fun. So I was drawing for fun, and I I eventually just colored it and I posted it. I wanted it to just be something people can use to basically communicate their outrage, their sadness, things like that. And they can repost it, whatnot. So then when I posted it, it just kind of went crazy. Like everyone started sharing it. And remember, I wasn't working for 7 months. So I was still paying rent for my shop out of my own pocket. I had no employees working, anything. So one of my friends, he owns five of the share teas here in San Diego. He was like, dude, you need to make like some shirts or something. And I was like, no, I don't really have the money. It would have cost me like, 10,000 to print like a few thousand of them. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. Well, I don't think it'll sell. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And he was like, no, you gotta do it. I'm like, no, I'm good. And my wife too, she was like, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, nah, it's not worth it. We don't know how long we're gonna be shut down. I don't know if I have the money to do it. And then one day he just orders it, right? So he orders 2,000 shirts. So 2,000 shirts. I've never done anything with apparel in my whole life. I've never sold clothes, anything. I never had a job in retail. Um, but like I said, I don't like owing people and I don't like to let people down. So I made it work. I made a website for it. I did the whole Shopify thing, the cart, all that. I learned everything there was to learn within like 2 weeks while it was getting printed, right? So all those shirts came. So then I started taking pre-orders. Um, I think we sold maybe 1,500 shirts in like a month and a half or something like that. So 1,500 shirts, and we donated 10% of all the proceeds to Hate is a Virus. And then the rest, the funds actually saved my business.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was crazy. So it was an accident, the whole thing was an accident. But then that wasn't the craziest year. The next year, this around the same time when things started amping up again, that's when it really went viral, which I don't understand. I think someone had reposted it and then all of a sudden it caught traction again. But that's when I met like Ty Wing, and um, I got in contact with Johnny VQ, and Facebook posted it, Instagram posted it. I was on PBS. I was doing VN Express. I was on the Vietnamese news channel. I was doing all these podcasts. It was pretty crazy.
God.
So then I sold another 1,500 shirts,
See,
and then I cut it off. Yeah.
why did you cut it off?
I don't know. I didn't want to dilute the message too much, I guess. I don't know. I had this thing where I was like, okay, I'm not just going to keep beating this. I felt like I didn't want to feel like I was using this message for profit. So I decided I copyrighted it, and then I'll just donate it where I can donate it. So I cut it. There's people ask me to use the design, like, oh, can we use the design? I was like, no, unless you're doing something good with it, that's it. That's why I copyrighted it, right? I mean, there was a lot of replications. I saw someone actually print out a bunch up in Seattle. I had to send them a cease and desist, but it got pretty crazy, and I didn't have time. I was literally packing all these shirts, folding them. One time, it took me like I had to do it overnight because I had all these pre-orders. It took me 8 hours to do all of them. And with my tattoo schedule, it was just too wild.
Man, the kind of shit that happens when luck just comes by, right?
Yeah.
It keeps you in business during the hardest part of, that time period for all of us.
Mhm.
It's amazing what the universe sort of like delivers to us when we don't expect it. It's like, it's so interesting to me when I think about things that I hear in these interviews and how much it relates to luck. And, it's sometimes it's being at the right place, the right time and being prepared. But sometimes, like in your situation, it's not even like there's no preparation. You drew something and you didn't even want to put it out there. Or you didn't even want to do t-shirts with it. Your friend's like, I'll put money down.
Yeah.
And he probably made all of his money back and then some, with it's
Yeah, he fronted like $10,000. I think I paid him back within like 6 weeks. So it was pretty crazy. But it was extremely difficult because I don't know if you know this, but tattoo shops have extremely hard time like getting business insurance that covers a lot of things. When I had applied for the grants, the loans, things when we got shut down, I got rejected every time. I think I didn't receive a grant from California until 2 years later. So they paid me out like a little amount or whatnot. But at the time when I needed it, it was like, oh no, we're gonna give it to all the nail salons, the barbershops, things like that. I feel like it's because this niche is not it's not considered a real business yet to a lot of people in the business world, to our people, whatever it may be. But it's hard. It's definitely hard to navigate. Like just getting business. If you were trying to get a business loan to open a tattoo parlor, you'll definitely get rejected. You know, it still has that negative connotation in the business world. So those shirts saved my life.
I want to ask you about your style. How
Yes.
much of that, because you know, you are really focused on the foundation work and the social
Mhm.
aspect of this all. And we haven't talked about the stylistic side of things because some people are generalists that just do whatever the client asked them to. Um,
Yes.
they probably stick within a specific style, but some people like just really concentrate on specific lanes that they want to do and they just want to expound and get really good at that. How do you feel? What's your sort of theory on being somebody who can just do all the art that people come to you from all walks of life? Or are you part of a tradition that you feel that this is a sacred way of life and you want to just kind of focus on this niche?
I didn't have the privilege of having a specialty. When I started tattooing, it was out of necessity. So I took beggars can't be choosers. So I took in literally. It doesn't matter if it was a butterfly or a full Asian back piece. So a lot of the tattoo artists now they have all the resources like YouTube videos to teach them, and they have classes they can take, seminars, things like that. When I was starting, is there's like maybe one or two DVDs that you could watch on tattooing, and the tattoo shows had just barely come out. Everyone was still kind of skeptical about it. Tattoo schools were really frowned upon, and it was basically you had to seek out an apprenticeship, or else you weren't considered a serious tattoo artist. So I I wanted an apprenticeship really bad. I worked for these two Mijang guys actually, because I was trying to take a different route than just the, learning Asians learning from other Asians type deal. And they didn't really teach me much, unfortunately. They kind of just put me to work after 3 months because they knew I already knew how to tattoo, but I wanted to learn, you know what I mean? So it was tough. So I just took in whatever work I could, and um, I just taught myself basically, so repetition, countless hours doing research. And I learned to love everything. Even though I may specialize in one thing or another, I can still appreciate every style of work, because you have to if you're going to do the tattoo. If you're not into it, or don't force yourself to be into it, then there's no point in doing it at all, because it's going to look like shit, right?
Yeah, but do people come to you because they know that you are emphasizing one particular tradition? Is that something that your
Um,
client base think of you like you're an anime guy, or you're like a California sort of, the way scripts
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
written in California, so yeah, do
Uh-huh.
people come to you for a certain thing?
Yeah, it's mostly large scale Asian work with emphasis on realism, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Yeah. So ironically, when I started tattooing, though, my specialty was like Chicano work,
Wow,
and it
interesting.
just kind of gravitated. Obviously, because I'm Asian, so people assume I do Asian work. So I got all this Asian work, and now I'm like an Asian tattoo artist, you know. But it also helps the selling point, because people would rather go to an Asian tattoo artist for Asian tattoos, right?
Totally.
But me, I grew up with a lot of Mexicans, and mostly Mexican neighborhood, and I was doing nothing but gang tattoos, like lettering, um, Virgin Marys, things like that. So even like the Asian gangsters in my neighborhood, they're all getting the same thing too, like just the hood tattoos, pretty much. Not
Yeah.
really images, words. So that's what I started off doing a lot of, and I eventually gravitate towards Asian work in maybe like 2009 or something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When people come to you and you look at what they want and you hear what they want and you think that is some whack shit, do you tell them? I mean, how do you
Oh
break
yeah,
it to people?
I'm super straightforward. So I'll tell them in a way where it doesn't offend them and it makes them think. So if you came to me and you gave me a really bad idea, I would be like, I'm like, I don't think that's gonna look good. But if you want to do it, then we will do it. You know what I mean? And almost always they're gonna change their mind. And there's other times where people want to get things that are maybe offensive to other people, right? I had a Mijang guy come in one time, and he wanted a tattoo of fuck on his leg, right? But with marijuana leaves surrounding him, right?
And this
So I
is
was
not a
like,
joke. This is not a
no,
joke.
no, 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 no. But like, when it comes to customer service, if you say anything wrong, you're like the bad guy. So in turn for his dumb idea, I had to give him a dumb price and a dumb waiting time. So I told him, okay, I'm gonna charge you $500 an hour, and it's gonna be a 3-year wait. And that deterred him, and then I never saw him again. But there's no way to put him down lightly and tell him like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? And there's other things that you just kind of pick up while on your journey as an Asian tattoo artist, like superstitions and things like that. Like, one, you can't get umbria like anywhere, umbria, fuck, anywhere below your waistline is
Oh, wow.
disrespectful, right? and you should always have them blinded so they can't, see your sins. It's things like that. Koi fish going up, um, just little things that are passed down from generation to generation that you have to know. And that's what the client's paying you for, is for that knowledge, right? You
Oh,
can't
that's
learn that from any
blowing.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just superstitions.
And have you ever crossed the line with the superstition? Like unknowingly crossed the line? You're like, oops.
No, no, no. Like, unless they want to, like a lot of Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, we're all really different. Like the Japanese, they almost always dot the I's on their dragons, versus the Chinese usually hollow them out or make them glassy with no pupils.
Hmm.
Everyone just has their own beliefs. The Japanese tattooing, they don't mind putting images of gods and deities on the legs, but with Chinese, Vietnamese, we cannot. Right. So you just have to know the difference and explain the differences to the client, and whatever else is up to them.
Yeah. Now, you've been sitting in a chair with clients who sit in a chair who you exchange ideas and change emotional patterns and see trauma and hurt. How much of that gets expressed in tattoos? Or is it more balanced with, happiness and, joyful things? I'm curious to know how much trauma and hurt is a part of tattooing expressed in art versus like happy and joyous things.
The amount of people that get tattoos to represent traumatic times in their life versus happy ones is pretty balanced. You know what I mean? It's not more one or the other. People like to mark milestone both ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean? When people have babies, they're really happy. They want, their baby's footprints tattooed on them to mark that special time in their life. And, other times I'll do memorial tattoos, and that marks the end of someone's life. So I'm superstitious, and I almost never charge anyone for memorial tattoos.
Whoa, what does
Yeah.
that mean?
No, I don't feel right.
So wait, if
If
somebody,
I'm tattooing someone's dad that passed away's name on it, I'm not gonna charge them for that. You know what I mean?
no shit,
Yeah. I don't believe in that. It's weird. It's just weird for me.
but they have to have prior clients that you would do that for, right? It's not just
Mm,
people off the street.
Not necessarily. I mean, if they're gonna wait, if they're down to wait, then I'm willing to do that for them. But usually they want it immediately. So I rarely get those, but when I do, it's like I wouldn't feel right taking like any type of monetary contribution for, marking the end of somebody's life. Much. It's a personal thing. I don't know.
Wonder where that comes from.
It's just taking care of my people. I My clients that have been with me since 2005, I still charge them the same as I did in 2005. So if I was charging them $50 an hour, that's what I'm charging them today. Right. So it takes a toll sometimes on my life, but that loyalty, it's priceless, right? So that's how I've been able to maintain this crazy large group of clientele. I mean, it becomes a headache because everyone has like a different price, different rate. They all met me at different times in my life, but I work through it, and they keep my business going. So why
And how
not,
do you
right?
keep track of that pricing? Do you put in a notebook?
Yeah, I have to note them every single time I book them. So it gets pretty crazy, but we work through it. You know,
Who do you respect in the Vietnamese tattoo world? Is that too racy to ask?
no, I don't know. I don't really. I communicate with all, like, a lot of Vietnamese tattoo artists. I wouldn't say I focus on one or the other person unless I kind of know them personally, like Andy. I talk to him here and there. Talk to Tony Dang here and there, just because we're within the same
World.
circle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I have never looked at another tattoo artist like, oh, I'm going to be exactly like them. I've always tried to stay in my own lane and do my own thing. I don't want to be part of the industry. right? Like if you find me, you find me. If you don't, then you don't. I don't do conventions, anything. It's all pretty much word of mouth. If you see me online, then maybe you'll hit me up. But that's how my whole business model has been based since I was young. So I stay true to that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're running a business and you want to keep your kind of uniqueness, and you want to be relevant in your own way and not, be part of the herd.
Yeah. And I don't feel like, I mean, I love tattooing. It's, I do it every day. It's always going to be something that I do, but it's not my final act, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like
So
it. Doesn't seem like
yeah, it's a means to something else. So that's where the nonprofit comes in. That's why I'm building it because, eventually when I do retire, when I'm 55 or whatever, that's what I'll be doing. Because I've never had a real job in my life. Like literally, I have nothing on my resume but business owner, and that's it. Right. So I don't have a backup plan. I never have had a backup plan. So I was forced to make this work. So that's why it was so crucial for me to, lay everything on the line and make it happen. And it's a miracle that I did. So now it's time for me to pass all the knowledge, pass all the hardships and my ability to maneuver those hardships onto the next generation and try to help them out as much as I could, you know,
yeah,
just for Southern California at the time.
yeah. And there's not a whole lot of Vietnamese tattoo artists. If you really think about them, you break it down,
Yeah,
because
there's not.
name two other guys, right? Tony Dang and Andy Tran. Um, I know maybe three or four more,
Yeah,
and
there's a lot in
that's
Orange County now. Yeah.
Latin Orange County. But the tradition of, like, if you go to Japan or there's Japanese tattoo artists, there's a
Yeah.
long line of those guys, and
Oh yeah.
their artwork is very specific to
Hmm.
specific genres, and maybe 100-year tradition, and maybe
Hmm.
things like my imagination runs wild when I think about like the Yakuza and who they get their tattoos from and how they go down that route, right? It's like a rabbit hole of tradition and decades of journeymen in the tattooing world in Japan.
Yeah, I feel like they don't produce a lot of bad artists in Japan because they have a history of that trial and error already. That's so long ago, 1,000 years. Whereas the Vietnamese, you know, tattooing community, we only started maybe what the 70s in prison in America.
20 years
So
ago, if you really think about it on a commercial level, like the way you and Andy have gone about it, or Bob out of OC
yeah,
Tattoos, and
yeah.
20 years tops, of really
Mhm.
kind of like, okay, now we got some sort of rhythm here. But I think for, going back to the Japanese guys, the hundreds of years potentially, and even in the Philippines,
Mhm.
there's traditions, or the Maori, out of these
Yeah, all the
islands,
Polynesians, yeah.
Polynesians, they have their long traditions of tattoo artists. And I'm again, I keep saying this, I'm very interested in this art form because of, my brother has this line of like comics that he developed in Vietnam with his animating teams, and he has a toy company, and many of the images we don't have. We
Yes.
I mean, we have it, but it's not like, you don't feel like it's Vietnamese. And
Hmm.
if we don't have
Hmm.
these visual representations, whether it's in ink on bodies or
Hmm.
on canvas, then we don't have this sort of like flavor yet. And I think
Yeah.
watching tattoo artists in the Vietnamese community, hopefully in Vietnam and the United States or in the diaspora, opens up this sort of like this visual sense of maybe an identity that I'm looking for. I'm looking for it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to explore this visual side within the tattoo space.
Yeah. I think Vietnamese people are just, have a long history of what give everything. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
So we're just so used to just picking up where
But
somebody
cute.
else left
Yeah.
off. And yeah. So I don't know. It's hard. It's going to be a while till we have our own flavor, pretty much.
Well, I'm glad you're honest about that,
Yeah.
because you've been around for 2 decades, and it's important that we acknowledge that, and we don't bakjuk, we don't copy, we don't we have to copy, we have to identify that, copying and eventually evolving into our own sort of way of looking at the world through our lens is so important. And that's the next final question. What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you these days?
What does it mean to be? I think when it comes down to it, it's the responsibility as a Vietnamese American to make your parents' sacrifices worth it. Coming over here to a distant land where they don't know anything, where they don't know anyone, to kind of rise above all that, help them through it, and pull your whole family through in order to make your mark here. And then from there, you help the next generation, and it just goes on from there. My family came here with nothing, so it's really weird for me to be at this stage in my life. And it took me a while for my parents to be proud of me for what I do. They didn't take it seriously till maybe I opened my third shop or something. But we're at a point now where they know that I've done everything that I could with the tools that I had, and just trying to make them proud.
Dennis, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate the work that you do, and I look forward to more years of seeing the work and your foundation and all the work you do in the social world of in San Diego, in the cultural sense too, not just in the tattoo and art world, but seeing what you're doing for society.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. Special thanks to Brittany Tran, to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast.